What's up? Guys, take a 1-minute breather. We'll be right back. We're gonna be starting off. We're short class, got a lot to do, all right? So like I said, catch your breath, stretch, got 28 minutes. I know Where did you? What class even is this? Whap. What does that mean? That's not what Whap. Why are you giggling? No, you. All right, you should giggle. Life is great. The longest thing you're ever gonna do. Damn, bro, that was deep. Oh, you guys over here playing. What are you doing over here, man? What are you doing? It's fiddling with your phone. Be in life. Be here. The phone's not real. Everyone else is on their computer. No, they're not. We're engaging. What's your name? What are you talking about? Huh? Kenna. She's not even listening. What's your name? Owen what? Huh? Larimer. What about you? What? Rowan. Rowan what? Yon. See? Not from France. Are you from France? Oh, good. I ain't dealing with that. Are you still in the car? Bro, you're only.
You look at cars every day. I want to buy it.
Oh, are you like in the car? Your car guy?
Every morning I shop on the trailer.
You know how to work on cars?
No,
That's time. I respect it. You. What's your name, bro?
I got to call like 5 days.
Gabe.
Oh, Gabe.
This is what you're asking me to talk about. I don't really like it. I mean, forgot what your name is, but Mr. Burnett, I'm about to roast your whole class here.
Yeah, I remember.
What? Good, because I don't want to get COVID from you.
Good thing I got vaccinated.
You can still, that's not how it works. Let's just be clear. Just because you're vaccinated, you can still spread it, people. And so you don't contract.
He's just been in a bad mood and a huge bully.
No.
He's a huge bully.
What you're doing now is spreading false information.
Okay, on recording.
Okay, but let's get this on recording then. Just because you can't contract it doesn't mean you can't spread it.
Okay, that was our random fact for the day. It wasn't even a debatable thing. Thank you.
It clearly is.
No one wants to debate it.
You deny science.
I don't know. I told him to leave. I don't want to spend some quality time with these students. And the 2 students with their videos on. Thank you, everybody. We now have 17 people in a 30-person class. Where is everybody? Oh, wow. There's one more. Not that the class is only 28 minutes long, which is already handcuffing me because the last one was 56 and I didn't even get everything done. So, trying to be polite here in a swamp of don't have to be polite in this. All right, here's what I'm going to start off with real quick as people are still getting on here. All right, let's do this. Let's see where the word is. This is not the one I wanted. Shucks. This is. All right. Zoomers, I'm going to share the screen real quick. Non-Zoomers, you're sitting in the room here. This is an entrance ticket we did last period. We're just going to do this together instead of doing the actual discussion on Canvas. And so take a look at the screen, please. Let's get everybody share hands in class or on Zoom. You raise your hand, please. An event which led to the beginning of World War II in Europe or Asia. Let's do Asia first. Rowan. All right, the rape of Nan King, 200,000 plus people murdered in 1939. All right, what else? Asia, yeah. Okay, the Japanese, well, really, you can go back to 1932, the Manchurian Crisis, where they plotted a bomb on a railroad, said the Chinese did it, and then they used that as a means to start taking China over, and then a full-scale invasion in 1937. Good. I would add to that Pearl Harbor, attack on Pearl Harbor, Singapore, Malaysia, the Philippines. Okay, I would also probably add the takeover of the Japanese military, of the Japanese government. Their imperial diet and constitution was out the door. All right, let's go Europe. This should be a little bit easier. I'm looking at some Zoomers, waiting to see if any of them are going to do anything. Want to raise your hand? An event that led to the beginning of World War II. Carson James.
The annexation of Austria. Wouldn't that have a role in it?
Can you say that again, please?
Annexation of Austria.
The annexation of Austria, the Anschluss. Very good. Gabriel Peterson, not loud enough for them to hear you. That's not loud enough.
The invasion of Poland.
Invasion of Poland, 1939. That works. Give me 2 more. 3 more. Come on. Anyone in person can help. Owen. Formation of the Axis powers. Bingo. That's good. Anybody else? The remilitarization of the Germany under the Nazi Party, right? Or the takeover of the German government by the Nazis and Adolf Hitler. Rowan, what else are you gonna say? Okay, remilitarization of the Rhineland. That works also. I might add in the Hitler and Stalin made the Soviet non-aggression pact, the Munich appeasement, or the Munich pact, where they appeased Hitler and let him get away with taking the Sudetenland, and Italy's violent aggression in taking over North Africa and also Ethiopia. Could add to that as well. All right. We did read this passage yesterday in class, and it was kind of how we ended class, but what were some of the motives that the Japanese would have had to attack the United States? Think on this one here. Gabriel.
The U.S. Made up like 86% of Japan's imported war materials, and when the U.S. froze that off, like Japan had pretty much nothing to do, no income from imported war materials.
Yeah, so when the U.S. cut off Japan from war materials like oil and iron, you can't make ships, you can't make bombs, you can't make bullets, planes, etc. without iron and oil, right? Other things then, and that was kind of the main part of this quote, but the fact that the U.S. Put an embargo on Japan basically backed Japan into a corner. All right, everyone understand what it means? Like a caged animal, with no food, it can be very aggressive. So this is what happened. All right, good. I'm happy. I like that. I like the participation there. So let's kind of move on and discuss a couple other key concepts and see where we can get from there. So I don't know if I showed you this yesterday or not. I'm trying to think. Did we look at the size of the navies, the armies? Okay, so take a look at this right here. This is the military strength in the Pacific. Okay, when I say the United States was ill prepared for this thing called World War II or a war in the Pacific, it is extremely obvious. The United States had 3 total aircraft carriers in the Pacific Ocean. That means from San Francisco down to San Diego and over to Hawaii. 3. 9 battleships, I don't know, about 17 cruisers, destroyers, a handful of submarines, about 1,000 planes, and about maybe 120,000 troops. That's it. Look at the size of the Japanese military strength in the Pacific, and you can just see how much more the numbers are on the left side. Now, the United States being the economic powerhouse of wanting to stay neutral, this again, I want you to question or think, why would the Japanese even think about attacking the United States? Again, in hindsight, almost every historian will agree that the Japanese knew the best they could do was just barely hurt the United States. Okay, give them enough time to regroup and hope they can stop them from coming back. Why would they do that though? This I think whatever you want to call it, graph, depiction, blah blah, kind of shows you why they would take that risk, right? You guys get it? Okay, and you understand that I'm saying the United States was woefully under prepared for this. You understand that? Okay, good. Let's move on then. We're gonna skip this quote. Basically, Japanese were used to treating their aircrafts like they're part of their own body, and it was a part of Shintoism, their religion. Okay, this was a special torpedo used in Pearl Harbor. The United States had the belief that it would be impossible to attack Pearl Harbor because it was a shallow port and offered really good protection. But the Japanese undermined that by using civilian surveillance and submarines that had actually escaped into Pearl Harbor to identify where every single ship was, its location, and the depth of the water. So they added attachments to their torpedoes that could hit the water and bounce off of the bottom and then continue on and not explode. All right. Here's what Pearl Harbor looks like. I wanted you to gain a sense here of the idea that if you got stationed in Pearl Harbor in 1941, it was a paradise for a military personnel or a nurse in the military or a chaplain. Okay. I've been to the Officers Club on Honolulu. It's still there. It was made during the Great Depression in the 30s. Men were allotted X amount of beer and cigarettes a day, and there was no consideration that they thought they were going to go to war. Okay. And why would you? Look at that. If you were stationed in a place like this, would you be in a happy mindset? Yes. Okay. This is what Pearl Harbor looked like. The Japanese had every single boat mapped out. Look at how the boats were in lines. You guys see this? Okay, they were sitting ducks. Anyone with common sense would not have had all the boats like this in one place had they have known an attack was coming or was imminent. Okay, I'm just doing this because there's annoying sound effects. So, December 7th, 1941. I'm not going to listen to the speech. Maybe you've heard it, but a date which will live in infamy in the hearts and minds of all Americans. FDR, the president, says the United States was attacked by a country that they were in negotiations with and that there was no formal declaration of war. That's a no-no. Okay? That's kind of a nanner move in world history. And I don't mean kind of. It is. All right? Here's a picture of the speech. If you ever get to go to Pearl Harbor, again, I thought it was so cool to actually see the actual speech that FDR wrote, the words he changed around. And this was a copy that he read to the American public. It's one of the most famous radio addresses, obviously, in American history. But in terms of world history, it's important as well because this awoke a sleeping giant. Now, the results of this were really, again, it was a blow to American troops or American planes and boats in the Pacific because we had so few. 188 aircraft destroyed, 8 battleships damaged, 4 sunk, but they raised up these battleships. The only one that is still there to this day, it's an underwater tomb, is USS Arizona. Okay, and they call it the underwater tomb because you used to be able to walk out onto it. It's broken right now, but sometime soon again. Okay, the Japanese only lost 29 planes. That's the thing. Okay, and it was a huge hit to American morale. FDR plays this newscast, and my grandfather gets the newspaper on his door in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. Okay, it's like hell on earth. It's right there. It's probably like 50 below zero right now and 5 feet of snow. December 8th, he walks out on his porch, gets the newspaper, and he walks directly to the recruiting office and enlists. He volunteers, as do hundreds of other thousands of Americans, 18, 19-year-olds. Okay, very different than what happens in the United States now. All right, now here's the deal. Outside of Pearl Harbor, in a planned, coordinated attack, the Philippines, which were occupied by the United States, Malaysia, Malacca, the Strait, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Singapore is, I think, the largest port in all of Southeast Asia. It's huge. Hong Kong, obviously, extremely important to the British. All attacked on the same day, December 7th. So this was a coordinated, planned attack that had been planned for over 2 years by the Japanese military. Okay, so obviously that puts the United States at a disadvantage, and the British as well with their presence in Southeast Asia. Okay, the next string of events are kind of tricky. So in Southeast Asia, in particular the Philippines, the United States had quite a few men. We had occupied it. We were still trying to control the natives. General Douglas MacArthur was the governor of the Philippines. He would end up being a pretty famous general for the United States, but he would flee to Australia. 12,000 Americans were taken as POWs, and the other prisoners were Filipinos that fought on the side of the United States. And they were marched 60 miles in what's called the Bataan Death March, where they were forced to drink water that had feces in it. They were bayoneted. And when this became public, this further enraged the United States less than 6 months after Pearl Harbor. Okay, at the same time then, in your blue sheet, the final solution. Okay, if you're following along in your timeline. In a conference in a little vacation paradise about 20 miles outside the city of Berlin, a group of Nazi officials got together without Adolf Hitler. I want you to understand this. And that was where there are notes from this conference saying that they will now pursue what's called the final solution. There's only one place this is actually found in Nazi notes that were not destroyed. Okay. And so what happens is it goes from the Nazis trying to put Jews in concentration camps and or ghettos to now the goal is mass extermination. And they called it the final solution. And so it's in places like Dachau, Auschwitz, Birkenau, Buchenwald. These places now have gas chambers and ovens put into them. And if you've ever been to one, it is one of the creepiest things you'll ever do. And again, one of the worst things that's ever happened in history here. And at this point, Hitler was in a precarious situation because he was about to lose in Stalingrad as well. And so this was an attempt to get rid of the evidence that had happened also. Here's the Wannsee. It's unbelievable. I visited this really very not much visited museum because Germans don't like to talk about it. This is what it looks like, the house. This is the room where it was decided. The fate of 6 million Jews, other minorities were decided in this room. This is what it looks like. This is where the men were sitting around here. And there was a typist, and that was it. Hard to believe, right? Terrible. The United States in return came back with what's known as Executive Order 9066, where anyone of Japanese ancestry could be forcibly removed from their house. And instead of calling them concentration camps, they called them relocation camps. 110,000 people plus were given less than a day's time to evacuate their house and their personal belongings, and they were moved to camps. You can see like this right here, most of them in the middle of the desert, barbed wire put up around them. Obviously, they weren't treated as poorly as people in concentration camps in Russia or in Nazi Germany, but still happened. And there's still payments being made to ancestors of these family members by the U.S. government to this day. But not until, I think, 1973, Korematsu versus the U.S. did those payments start. Okay, here's where the internment camps are located. You'll notice there's one in North Dakota, Texas, and Arkansas also. This is where Germans were moved from the East Coast. They did the same thing to particular Germans who they thought had close ties to the Nazi Party. And then you can see how many different camps there were on the West Coast for Japanese, people of Japanese descent. All right, in terms of fighting, Britain and Russia were both begging the United States to get in on the war. The United States had not a single general with any type of experience. You understand this? The United States had not fought a battle since World War I, and they didn't fight much there either. And so in Operation Torch, the United States, not knowing what type of resistance they were going to face, invaded 3 different places. You see Algiers, Oran, and Casablanca. And so they basically, it was what's called an amphibious assault, meaning they had to go from water to land. And because this was what's called Vichy, French occupied, they did not know what type of resistance they were going to have. They did all sorts of reconnaissance work. I wrote my dissertation on this, if I have to be honest, okay, for graduating the history degree. And it was a huge gamble because American soldiers trained with broomsticks because the United States didn't have enough guns to train these young men. There was no experience. And so if you look right here in the green, if I get the annotation to stick out real quick, this is where the United States came from. They met up with British soldiers who were fighting against the Nazis in Egypt. And they met together to fight against the Germans in what would be called tank warfare, desert tank warfare. Another new kind of warfare for this kind of war. And it ended up being one of the most famous battles in North Africa between Bernhard Montgomery of the British and Erwin Rommel, known as the Desert Fox, who was Hitler's most trusted general. The U.S. turned the tide of the fighting. Again, big gamble, and eventually, not without struggle and losing at first, the United States and Great Britain pushed the Germans up into Italy and the Italians, and it's called the soft underbelly of the Nazi regime. Soft underbelly is that part of your stomach that hangs over your jeans when you wear too tight of jeans or you've eaten too much Thanksgiving dinner. You know what I'm talking about? It's gross. Well, that's what they called the Italians because they weren't necessarily as motivated as the Germans to defend themselves, and they didn't. Mussolini had grown thin on people. This is where also two names you'll remember and talk about next year: Dwight D. Eisenhower and General George Patton became famous in North Africa. They will go on to lead the United States in the invasion of D-Day and the Battle of the Bulge, and Eisenhower president for 2 terms in the United States. All right. This last concept looks like this, okay? Before I have you show you the words, I really wanted to give you an opportunity to, I wanted to give you an opportunity, if I can figure out where the annotation stick is. Oh, I'm losing it. All right, here we go. This is known as island hopping, all right? This is Pearl Harbor right here. This is December 7th, 1941. Look on the screen, okay? We were nowhere close to being able to bomb Japan. That's 5,000 miles, 5K. That's why we were so surprised at Pearl Harbor. So the first battle occurred in June. What's June? The 6th or 7th month out of the year? 7 months after Pearl Harbor, the United States fights Japan in a new type of warfare. And this one's going to be called basically aircraft carriers fighting each other with planes and throwing bombs at each other. All right, throwing missiles at each other. And so this is another new type of fighting in this war that the United States did not have a lot of practice in. And the United States would decidedly win the Battle of Midway, which was a massive blow to the Japanese, who thought that they could weaken the United States for years. Well, this kind of evened the playing field, and it showed the Japanese that they were going to be in retreat here from now on. That was their high water mark when they hit the United States at Pearl Harbor. And it could have been worse. They only unleashed 2 of their 3 lines of planes. Had they unleashed the 3rd, again, damage could have been worse. So I'm going to go back to this real quick here. I'm a little bit homerism because my grandpa fought obviously in the South Pacific too. But so this Battle of Midway, again, early June of 42, U.S. loses 1 aircraft carrier, Japan loses 4. That's a big deal. You see that they lose 292 aircraft to 145, but just the morale of the United States Marines, Air Force, and Navy to be able to do this was a big booster for people signing up in the war, companies switching over to making, war materials. And so this became a new strategy known as island hopping, where the United States would try to take 1 island atoll at a time to get closer to Japan. Unfortunately, that's all I really get to talk about today because of the fact that the bell is going to ring here in about a minute. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go back to Canvas. Hold on a second, please. Please, I know I got a lot going on. Okay, those of you on Zoom, trying to find you here. There you are. All right. Let me explain what's going on with these DVQs. So make sure you're all ears right now, please. In class as well. All right. Here's what you're going to be turning in. All right. Say Google. All right. All right. It says 221, turn in file DVQ, right number 2 with peer grade sheet. There was confusion yesterday. So to eliminate confusion, by Sunday night at 11:59, you got time. 8 minutes. Okay. Sunday night, 11:59. This is what needs to be turned in. typed essay that is color coded. If it's not typed, it'll be a 0. If not color coded, it will be a 0. All right, there's the color coding sheet. A peer edit sheet. Okay, this should be returned to you from your partner. If you did not get one back from your partner or you didn't write it in time, you edit it yourself, because that's another way to double check that you need to have what you need to have. Lastly, double check your thesis to make sure it answers the question. So I put the thesis in the prompt right here. It's going to be worth 80 points, and this is going to be your only submission. So make sure you put some time into it. Check it to the rubric if you have to. If you have questions, send me one. Yes. Yes, sir. Okay. Can you ask them to do that? Okay. Don't leave on Zoom because I need to take a picture real quick. All right, Zoomers, you're free to leave. I got to go wipe down these desks. Thanks, everybody. Sorry for the short class period. Hope everybody has a great weekend. All right. All right. Bye-bye.